How's it going, people? So today we're gonna look at bits and pieces of information that were related to a writing task 1 integrated that some of my students partially remembered on this date. It was April 21st, 2024. Not that long ago from the last month. Okay, so with this one, we were able to tell it was a differences in opinion prompt. Okay, so in the reading, they basically mentioned something like this. So they mentioned some information about why the wall of some random ancient city was probably, most likely, not used for a defensive purpose. Okay, so you have this wall, kind of imagine it. This is like a history topic, a civilization topic. And it's like this, huge, humongous wall. But according to the intro paragraph of that random article, that random text, that reading passage, it was not used for a defensive purpose or a defensive function. So what usually happens is in the body paragraphs 2, 3, and 4, actually I should say paragraphs 2 through 4, which will be your 3 body paragraphs. Here, they're going to elaborate on 3 reasons why they weren't used for a defensive function, okay? Because the thesis or the main argument is that, they weren't used for it. And then here, they're going to elaborate on why that is. So in the first one, they could mention something like, firstly, blah, 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 the wall could easily be attacked. They could penetrate this wall. They could attack it, destroy it right away. So it's not really defensive at all. And the second, argument is also there's only one entrance and exit in that area. So that's not really safe. And they elaborate on the details that support this argument. The final argument, is finally there's not enough water. So maybe there's like a picture of a moat, or they mention something about a moat. So that's like a ditch that's usually filled with water that surrounds some kind of building or fort. And usually, in a lot of cases, they are used for defensive purposes. However, some moats are only, ornamental or decorative in nature. They're just like a decoration. They have some fish in them, and they're not really used for security purposes whatsoever. Anyway, so even if we don't remember the information from the lecture, we can kind of anticipate what it's going to be about 90% of the time. So we can expect that the lecture will be about 3 reasons why the wall of an ancient city was actually used for defensive purposes. So, the professor will mention opposite information, okay? That's just different from what the reading had just mentioned earlier. In some rare cases, maybe like 5% or 10% of exams, there could be situations where they do support the information found in the text, but those are super rare. So just be aware of that. Now, this is just a skeleton of a response for this, random topic, okay, this situation. So you want to memorize something like this. It doesn't have to be this, but this is just something that's easy to memorize. So here's a template. Both the reading and the lecture are discussing. What are they discussing? Whether the wall of an ancient city was used for defensive purposes. Okay? So obviously this is mentioned in the intro paragraph from the reading passage. Then here, you could use whereas if they have different views, right? Whereas or although, the reading mentions 3 reasons why it could not have been used for such a function. Right? I'm kind of paraphrasing purpose or purposes to function here. This way I'm boosting my vocab criteria. The lecture rejects the arguments made in the passage, right? Those reasons, those arguments are going to be debunked by the professor. And contends that, I use contends because it's a stronger way of saying argues. So I always start off with my strong words first. Show off, be a prick. Show off. And then later on, if you have to paraphrase contends, you could say argues that or something similar, asserts that. It could have been possible. All right. So when you get into your body paragraphs, right, you already have your intro paragraph knocked out out of the way. That should take maybe more or less 2 or 3 minutes, not too long. You want to spend, remember, 5 minutes on average on body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, and body paragraph 3. You do not have to have a conclusion. Don't worry about it. Just check your work. The writer starts off by pointing out that this is a random template. I always come up with new ones. Just, practice them. Just get comfortable with the English language. The wall could easily be attacked. Now here, since this information is going to come directly from the reading, you could add maybe one more sentence. Just make sure, super important guys, paraphrase that information. Do not copy paste. I'm going to repeat myself again. Do not copy paste information from the reading. Do not extract it and present it here word for word for word, okay? They know that. They're not stupid. Artificial intelligence is grading your exam, and you'll get 0 points for that. So don't do that, or at least lose a significant amount depending on how you do overall. So once you've done that, you want to get into the opposite information, what the listening had to say. But don't refer to it as the listening. That's kind of cheesy. You could say lecture, professor, speaker, instructor. You could use this kind of language instead, lecturer. According to the professor, however, to indicate the contrast and explain the counter argument in 2 to 3 sentences. I don't have the information from the lecture. This was from someone's test. I'm just showing you the skeleton of your response, the outline, the structure. All right? Once you're done doing that, 5-6 minutes, right? Average, you're going to come to body paragraph 2. Secondly, the article notes that, or you could say points out that, explains that, practice your verbs, guys. Your nouns and verbs, your subjects and verbs. There was only one entrance and an exit. Why is that important? Why is it relevant? Which makes it unlikely for the wall of an ancient city to be used defensively against invaders. There we go. Now, you may have another detail you want to add for the reading. If you don't, that's fine, because the information taken from the lecture that we type up has to always be twice the amount of the reading. That's a fact. I don't care what some, bogus YouTubers have to say. The information from the reading and lecture should never be even. You want to give more weight for the information that's coming from the professor, the speaker, the lecture. On the other hand, the lecture reveals that whatever they had to say, at least in 2 to 3 sentences. If you have 4 sometimes or 5, that's rare. Maybe you had a big section, that could happen. Go for it. If you took a lot of notes from the listening, present the information. And don't be afraid to, tweak it a little, paraphrase some of the information in your notes so it doesn't sound, word for word from the lecture either. They're less picky about that compared to the information from the reading, since they give you the reading at the end. But still, try to paraphrase just a little for the information or content coming directly from the listening, okay? So your final paragraph, this is going to be paragraph 4, obviously. You had an intro paragraph, body 1, body 2, and last but not least, body 3. Let's knock it out. Last but not least, the author states that, explains that, asserts that, posits that, the moat surrounding the wall did not contain enough water to serve as water defense. Okay, it's about the point I made earlier. Now here, you can use however. We kind of used it, but it's fine since we're using a different syntax in the second paragraph. By putting however here, it doesn't really count as redundancy or repetition. So you would be fine. You would get away with it. But if you are a show-off like me and you want to diversify your response, you could have nevertheless, nonetheless, yet, on the contrary, in contrast, conversely, some of these kind of contrast markers. Just go with one of them. The speaker explains that, the speaker states that, the speaker reveals that, whatever verb you haven't used yet. But just don't use says that. You will lose points. Because says that is not appropriate for writing. It's appropriate for a speaking section, an informal, colloquial kind of context. All right, so, and then mention what they had to say based on your notes in 2 to 3 details here. 1 is not enough, guys. Don't clown around. You will lose tons of points. You need at least 2 sentences here. If you did present 2 in the reading, it would be better if you had 3. But yeah, minimum, you want at least 2 to 3. In some rare cases, if you had a fat section, a big one, you might have 4. That can happen. You do not have to worry about having a conclusion. Just go back and check your work. And if you guys really enjoyed what I elaborated on today, what I explained to you, please do subscribe to my Patreon. Paid members will get to see information related to the Writing Task 1 Integrated that test takers took on April 17th, 2024. And it'll be good. You'll get like another version of this. So you could see like how I'm putting the structure of the response together. Good for you, okay? So have a good one and take care.